Uber. Taxi drivers of Reddit. What is the weirdest conversation you overheard your passengers having? First story. I was the passenger in this case. My boyfriend and I got picked up from the train station. When the lady asked where we came from, we told her about our trip, how I love Stephen King, and my boyfriend planned out an awesome, creepy trip for my birthday staying at the Stanley Hotel in room 217. We told her some of the creepy things we saw and things that happened, and the lady told us that the paranormal voodoo stuff is real. She used voodoo to kill her ex-husband. I did not know what I got myself into. He was a bad guy, I do not regret it, but 2 weeks after I stabbed his doll in the heart, he died from a heart attack. He was a perfectly healthy guy. I have never touched that stuff again. It was the perfect ending to a creepy trip. Second story. Was a cabbie in Dallas about 6 years ago. I had a bunch of experiences. I had two Victoria's Secret models change panties in my car. I made $3,500 on Texas University of Oklahoma weekend. I regularly took men to Asian massage parlors, and the girls paid me $20 a head, plus the fare from the men. I was sitting outside the Hyatt Regency in downtown Dallas, waiting in the cabbie line. Then all of a sudden, all the drivers got out with rugs and started praying. Me being a white man from the Midwest was a little awkward. I missed that job. It is easy money and you have no boss. Third story. I drove for Uber a few times for extra money. I picked this girl up outside a fraternity house around 10:30 on a Friday. She got in the car and said to me, "Oh my God, you are my savior. I just had to get out of there." Soon after she gets a call, and it goes like this. "Oh my God, yes. When he told me, I freaked out and just had to leave. I mean, it is curable. So it is fine, but I have to tell so-and-so and so-and-so." The girl talked about getting a sexually transmitted disease on the phone while in my front seat. Fourth story. When I drove for Uber, I overheard two girls talking about whether or not they were going to poke holes in their boyfriend's condoms. I got pretty annoyed. Fifth story. A buddy of mine drove for Uber for a couple of years. A good-looking woman in a slim black dress seemed relatively normal on a Saturday night. After talking for a bit, she alludes in a not-so-subtle manner that she is an escort. She likes the music he plays. He is a nice guy, and he makes her laugh. She ends up offering him $100 cash per off a ride if he is willing to be her exclusive pickup and drop-off person when she sees clients. It is super tempting, also pretty illegal. He almost said yes, but turned it down. Later, he read that the Denver Police Department has been actively tracking Uber and Lyft drivers who have been making arrangements with pimps, prostitutes, and drug dealers. It is way easier to avoid suspicion when you are just the passenger. Sixth story. Not mine, but my little brother's. He picked up some couple, both of them in their early 40s, from a bar. He is super outgoing and talked with them the whole way. Somehow the topic came up that he has never done shrooms, but has tried LSD and marijuana, so the guy says that they should swing by his place first. They get there, and the door is locked, and he does not have his keys, so they are trying to get into the house somehow, and he has a dog flap door. So my brother gets on his hands and knees and crawls through the door and unlocks it. The guy goes in and grabs some stuff, and then they go to the woman's house. He drops them off, and they invite him in. Some background: this is Utah, and my brother is just getting over his first marriage, which did not even last a year. They are talking about it, and the woman asks if he has never seen a real woman's breast before, flashes him, and they all just continue talking for a while. When my brother is going to leave, they tip him. His tip, $100 in a bag of shrooms. He later showed me videos of him doing shrooms while he was with a friend who was sitting with him. Kind of not an overheard conversation, but a very odd sequence of events for a kid who is just barely leaving the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Seventh story. Not a driver, but a passenger. My girlfriend and I were getting dropped off at Walt Disney World and were having the usual small talk. The driver mentioned he was from Cuba, and I said, "I am part Cuban." That is where it all took off. He proceeded to tell me all about his religion. I am still not sure what it was, but my family is Catholic, and I think he was somewhere in that ballpark. He said he was a sorcerer and showed off all his dragon rings and talked about the mystical powers of some saint. He said his ex-wife was a voodoo witch and did all kinds of weird activities and they had to get divorced. He played some kind of chant-sounding thing from his phone, but I do not speak Spanish, so I did not know what it was. Then he wished us a good time at Disney and we were on our way. Eighth story. Two Pikachu cosplayers planning to beat someone up. Ninth story. A couple of days ago, I overheard a little kid asking his mother if he could come along with her to babysit, and she replied, "No, they do not trust you." And he goes, "What? I have only accidentally killed a baby once." I tried not to laugh. In all seriousness, it was just unexpected. 10th story. My friend and I play this game that whenever we get a taxi, we have the most ridiculous conversations ever, in as serious a tone as possible. Favorites are comments like, "I know he is my brother, but he is also the father of my child. And if my mother can be in a committed relationship with him for years, then so can I. And I still do not think it counts as murder. He was really annoying, and it is not like anyone could ever find the body. I think I just did the world a favor." 11th story. I once picked up the owner of the company I was driving for along with a friend of theirs. Very late at night, very drunk. We stopped to get them some gyros for the ride home, which was about 30 minutes. The gyros were devoured in about 2 minutes, which left plenty of time for the full-on sex that went on for the rest of the ride home. The smell of gyros and lady-on-lady sex for 25 minutes was interesting. 12th story. Kind of backward, but one time an Uber driver, male, asked me, also male, if I had ever seen the movie Deliverance while driving me to a fairly secluded wooded area. For those who do not know, Deliverance is a movie where some individuals go into the woods and one of them gets raped by some hillbillies. 13th story. I was asked if it was okay for vegans to swallow semen. 14th story. I was picking up these 3 girls and a guy right as the bar was closing. The guy was very drunk. One of them forgot their phone and one of her friends got off quickly and ran to grab it. Then one girl and one guy were in my car. She told him to leave his girlfriend, the girl who went to get her phone. She said things like, "I can engage in sexual intercourse better than her. I am hotter than her. I can make you happy." I was surprised she was speaking negatively about her friend. The other girls got back and the one that stayed went to the front passenger seat. I dropped off one of the girls that lived close by. I am driving the other 3 to their destination. I hear unbuckling and I look in the mirror and the guy's girlfriend is giving him a hand job. The girl sitting next to me joins in by reaching her arm back. I do not know how he became aroused when he was so very drunk. I get to their destination and the girl in the front seat gives me a kiss on the cheek. I drove off afterwards and looked to see if they left a mess. Fortunately, he did not ejaculate in the car, but I did have it detailed the next morning. Edit, I said he came in the car, but he did not. 15th story. 2 drunk men I picked up coming out of a San Antonio Spurs game. Nice enough guys, I even stopped and went through the Whataburger drive-thru for them. After the initial chit-chat, they settled in and started talking about random topics. Then they started talking about one of their bachelor parties, which sounded like it had happened pretty recently. Normal drunk male type talk about the strippers and drinking and how their friend had brought way too much cocaine. Say what now? Then the story gets pretty graphic with the bachelor talking about using cocaine off the strippers and the strippers using cocaine off of him and then performing oral sex on him and then having a threesome. Then he starts talking about how he has been engaging in sexual intercourse with this stripper on the side ever since the bachelor party, but how after he gets married, he is totally going to straighten up. I am pretty sure they had completely forgotten that I was even there until I pulled up at their apartment to drop them off. I received a $20 tip and a chocolate milkshake from Whataburger. 16th story. Lift line, 2 girls, one trying to convince the other to sleep with her single dad as a favor to her. Me and the driver just looked at each other. 17th story. The first time I ever used Uber, I was in St. Louis on vacation with my wife. We have never been there and we're not really familiar with the city. Anyways, we are driving with this guy who I think was from the Middle East, heading into downtown when we saw the arch. We both started talking about it, and were excited that we were so close. The Uber driver starts telling us facts on the arch. The arch was constructed in France and delivered here as a token of friendship in 1844. I look at my wife with a question look, and he continues, a lot of people do not know that. That is why it faces exactly east towards the Statue of Liberty. Now we both know that this guy is completely full of nonsense. We let him continue because, well, it was fun. It is amazing that when it first came over here, the elevator was built inside of it and it was hand-driven by 15 men at a time by using a pulley system. We still have no idea if this guy was messing with us or if he actually believed what someone once told him. 18th story. I was neither the driver nor the passenger in this situation, but my friends and I witnessed the whole thing. It is not a conversation per se, but it is still the best thing I have witnessed involving taxis or Ubers. I grew up and still live in a pretty well-known college party town. My buddies and I have been hanging out at my friend's house, drinking some, and decided to head down to this place to get some late-night burritos. By then it was getting close to 2 o'clock in the morning when the bars would close. So we get there, some of us get food, some do not. We all perch on the ledge of the big window in front of the restaurant. This place was on the corner of a really busy intersection at the heart of a neighborhood that is entirely students. A popular student bar was directly across the street from us, and we noticed this 60-plus-year-old woman in a really short skirt floating around the door to this bar. Soon, people start trickling out when the bar closes. It becomes clear she is trying to snag a young buck who is too drunk to know better. This goes on for a few minutes until the last group of guys comes filtering out, and they have a straggler. She bags him. We can see the dude can barely stand. A cab pulls up, and she pulls open the door to let the poor guy climb in first. Then before she can climb in, the cab driver speeds off and makes a fast U-turn in the intersection. The windows were all down in the cab, so we can actually hear the passengers screaming as they circled around and passed by us. "What are you doing?" The cab driver shouted back, "I am doing you a favor." Meanwhile, the lady is chasing after the cab, waving her hand in the air as if he accidentally forgot her. We just sat there for a second, amazed the driver did the guy such a solid. 19th story. I was not the driver, but the passenger. I got in the taxi I ordered from the train station to my house, and there was a small carnival we drove past. The taxi driver and I had been chatting, the usual small talk, when he is working too, and so on. And suddenly we passed this carnival, and the guy started talking about how they were shutting the carnival down as 2 7-year-olds had been kidnapped the day before and the police had no leads, and how it is horrific to think that this still happens, and he does not even want to think of the poor girls. I got home and looked into it. None of this happened, nor had it ever in the town's history. 20th story. I was on my way to pick someone up when I received a text message from them saying, "I will give you head for a free ride." It was a guy. I am also a guy. They canceled shortly after. 21st story. I was the Uber passenger, and the driver scooped me and a friend up. We were riding, and he said, "Sorry, guys, I am in a conference call," and had a headset in. We were like, "No problem, man." And we just talked to ourselves, but he would chime in and chat with us. Toward the end of the ride, he said, "Sorry, I have to chime into the meeting." Now, I was thinking he would say some business stuff like, "Fourth quarter projections are down," or something. He said, "All right, everyone, we need to calm down. This is not the first time someone has killed themselves in our organization. It is a shame what happened to Frank, but we need to get out in front of this and put our public relations team on this." I just looked at my friend like, what the heck? And then the dude dropped us off. 22nd story. 3 that stick out. 1, I gave a ride to a large Jamaican man who was on his phone the whole time with his earbuds in so he could gesticulate wildly and constantly referred to himself in the third person. He was a rapper, and the whole time he was talking with someone about how awesome he was and how he turned down a $400,000 recording contract because it was not enough, and how in 3 years he would be dating Rihanna. I looked him up afterwards and found a couple of articles from 2 or 3 years earlier about him being a promising rapper. But nothing since then, and certainly nothing indicating he was anywhere close to getting big. 2. I had one guy who was taking a couple of calls from a Craigslist advertisement he put up. He said something about how his aunt worked for an insurance agency, and if they signed their name on this life insurance policy, they would get a check and they could split it with him once they cashed it. After two or three of them declined, he asked me if I was interested, and I told him I did not want to commit whatever kind of fraud he was proposing. I thought about trying to report him to whatever bureau covers that, but his plan seemed so stupid, he probably got caught anyway. 3, I picked up this high school student who, after a couple of minutes, started talking about how he had gotten arrested, completely unprovoked. He was quick to point out that it was not anything violent. It was for white-collar crimes. What? He started telling me how he got busted for tax evasion from selling guns or something. The whole time I felt like this was a weird thing to unload on your Uber driver. Then on the way, we had to stop by a bank so he could deposit a check or something. He said it would only take 30 seconds. After significantly more than 30 seconds had passed, I started to get concerned. His mother had requested the ride, and I did not even know his name. Was I the getaway driver or something? After a couple of minutes of looking around and listening for police sirens, he came out normally. There was traffic the rest of the ride, and I wanted nothing more than to drop this kid off and get out of here. He kept talking about how he is not a bad person and did not hurt anyone. But eventually I dropped him off and had to take a minute to compose myself. I feel like there is a good chance he was messing with me. And later, while hanging out with his friends, was like, lol. I totally convinced my Uber driver that I was some kind of psychopathic criminal, but it was a very unsettling experience. 23rd story. I am not an Uber driver, but one started to talk to me about mail-order brides and what I thought about them. It turns out he married a mail-order bride. 24th story. What slutty things should we dress as for Halloween? We could do a history theme. You could be Babe Abraham Lincoln, and I could be Hosea Parks. This had me smiling. 25th story. Yesterday I was in an Uber. It started with normal small talk. It ended with me smelling 1/8 of an ounce of weed and finding a new dealer. Not the weirdest, but it caught me off guard, definitely. 26th story. I had the opposite experience. I told the taxi driver I was studying to become a chemist. He said he knew some individuals who produce cocaine, and I could perhaps get a job with them. I am still 50-50 on whether he was serious. 27th story. I took an automobile service called Uber from San Jose to San Francisco. For those of you that do not know, that is about a 1-hour drive. 20 minutes into the ride, the Uber driver took a call from her life coach to talk about how she wanted to have a polygamous relationship with her fiancé, but he was not interested in it. My friends and I sat in silence as we listened to this woman talk about how she wanted to engage in sexual activities with another man for 20 minutes, and how it was her husband's fault for her not reaching her full potential. That situation was awkward, my friend. 28th story. Did you tell your mother to add me as a beneficiary to her Halloween decorations when she passes away? Yes, she changed it last week. Oh my God, it is going to happen, like, very soon. What on earth did I just hear? 29th story. I had a fraternity boy boasting rather proudly to his fellow fraternity boys about the time he consumed hallucinogenic mushrooms, defecated in his pants, and then engaged in sexual activities. 30th story. Not quite what you are asking for, but my last Uber driver was a flat earther. I thought he was being dishonest with me until he pulled out the notebook that was measuring his airplane travel time and speed that proved the earth was not round. 31st story. I had a middle-aged woman going to a spirituality church. For those who do not know, it is a religion in which they believe in spirits, reincarnation, and so on. She was alone and I heard her speaking. I assumed she was trying to talk something to me, and I asked, "Can you repeat, please?" And she said, "Sorry, I have an orange in my mouth." I never heard this expression before. It is not popular in my country, and I do not know what that means. After some time, I heard her talking again. She was clearly having a conversation with someone in law. She was asking questions, answering other questions, and so on. I looked at her, and she was not on the cell phone or anything. When I dropped her, I asked, "How many people are in this car?" And she gave me a bad look. 32nd story. Back when I drove, I got to a pickup, and the passenger came out and told me he had no money on his debit card tied to the account but had cash. He was not going terribly far and tossed me $20, figured why not, so I canceled the ride and turned the application off. While we were driving, this guy started talking about a couple of new handguns he just picked up and how great they are. This turns into a conversation about how he is a drug dealer and needs protection and whatnot. He apparently took a liking to me and asked if I wanted to start running drugs for him on the side. He demanded my phone number so that he could get in contact. Fortunately, we were close to his destination, so as he was getting out of the car, I gave him a fake number and got the hell out of there. I did not drive for Lyft or Uber much longer after that. 33rd story. I was an Uber driver for about 1 week. I had this lady get into my car, and I could tell something was wrong. I asked her how she was and started her trip. Soon after she got into my car, someone was calling her. She was motherfucking a storm up about her broke-ass boyfriend, then was fired up, saying that he did not come home last night with her new car. He is meeting with his probation officer this morning. He cannot miss it. I start to realize that I am driving this chick to go look for her car because her shitty boyfriend stole it. As I arrive at the municipal building, she is telling me I can pull over wherever. My city is medium-sized, but the parking is all over the place. This poor woman was late for work because of her deadbeat boyfriend. I could not let her walk around aimlessly looking for her car, so I offer her 10 minutes of my time to drive around looking. As we are driving, she is telling me all about this scumbag. She is trying to call him, leaving him voicemails. Finally, this dude calls back. They are yelling at each other. He was trying to tell her that he was getting her tire fixed because of a rock. Afterwards, I am feeding her Miss Independent alter ego, telling her she deserves better. He will never change. About 8 minutes go by, and we find her car. We started hooting and hollering. I pull up in front of her car and wait to make sure it is hers. She unlocks her car, opens the front door, and quickly slams it. I see this chick run to the back seat, open the door, and then start beating someone up. In my head, I am like, oh dude, you deserve that shit. As watching in awe, I see her drag another chick out of the car by her hair. Shit was crazy. I still get this weird adrenaline rush thinking about it. I will never forget that look Miss Independent has when I asked how she was. She nodded, got into her car, and drove off. 34th story. I drove a bus, but I think this still applies. Some girl was talking on the phone about a guy she was with and how he kept putting it in the wrong hole, and she did not know if he was lying to her about it being an accident. 35th story. My friend is an Uber driver. He picked up a fare in Atlantic City at one of the casinos, 4 in the morning on a Sunday morning, headed to New York City. Two middle-aged guys, trashed, dressed well, but their clothes were a little messy and they had no luggage. On the way up, they told my friend about how they had been there since Thursday and were gambling and clubbing and shit. Well, about 2 hours into the 3-hour drive, the one guy interrupts the other guy's rant about whatever and says with a shocked face, "Oh no, we forgot Stephanie." And the other guy goes, "What? Oh shit, we left her at, oh no, I do not know. Where is she?" My buddy, the driver, said, "Oh no, not Stephanie. Should we go back for her?" Since, that would just about triple his fare, but they did not want to go back. The one guy called her, and she answered, still at the bar they left her at. She had lost track of time and thought they were at the bar or gambling at the casino. All three of them had gone down to Atlantic City together, so the two guys asked my buddy to go get her after he dropped them off. He said she should probably just call for another Uber, but he gave them his number and would pick her up if she called. They tipped him well. Stephanie never called. 36th story. Well, my pickup calls me and says her mother wants to meet me first before she will let her daughter get in with a stranger. So then I actually have to get out and introduce myself, convince her I am not going to rape and murder her daughter. After about 2 minutes of me turning on the charm, it turns into an almost first date where you meet the girl's parents. The mother loved me, gave me a cheek kiss, and sent us off. Then I and the daughter flirted all the way to the club she was getting dropped off at. She gave me a kiss on the cheek too. So that is it. Just a slightly strange, wholesome, fun encounter. 37th story. I am a public bus driver in a college town. I had a student shouting across the bus that everyone needs to get their nipples pierced because it will complete their life. Edit, I would just like to clarify that it was a female student. 38th story. I shared a cab ride with two women in their 20s. It was getting late, and I wanted to get a cab home, but it was a bit pricey after midnight. I agreed with two strangers that we would split the cost. Their entire conversation for 30 minutes was yeah, followed by yeah, and they were not even drunk or on any drugs I could smell or tell from their physical signs. They were Australian, if that helps. 39th story. I am a passenger, but my mother and I had a conversation about her job once that resulted in us telling the Uber guy about the time she hit a shark in the face with a bag full of fish. I think that is his answer to this question. 40th story. Coming home from a party, late and very drunk, I ordered an Uber for myself and my two brothers. I was in the front, and my dearest brothers in the back seat began discussing the very intricate nature of each other's sex lives. I just watched the poor driver's eyes slowly widen and his knuckles go white. By the time they got to lubricants, this dude's eyeballs were about to pop out of his head. My house was first, and they kept going for another 10 minutes. That is how I lost my perfect 5-star rating. 41st story. I was the passenger. My driver basically expressed all his conspiracy theories in an 8-minute ride. He told me Barack Obama's real name is Barry Soetoro, and he is a time traveler. When I asked how he knows this, he replied, "It is all there on YouTube, and I should search for the name Andrew Basiago." I was not disappointed. 42nd story. I picked up a lady of the night downtown Minneapolis at 3 o'clock in the morning. She gets into the car and is on her phone. I start the trip and see that she is going to Mankato. For those unfamiliar with Minnesota, that is about 1 hour and 30 minutes southeast of the major metropolitan area. The ride starts out fairly normal as she is not paying attention to me or what I am doing. About 20 minutes in, she starts raising her voice at the person on the other end of the call. From what I can gather, it is her pimp. He is furious with her for not bailing another girl out of jail who got caught in a prostitution sting the night before. Really, he just wants to bring her back in the same service of transportation private ride to Mankato because he did not want to pay for 2 trips. Her response almost made me piss my pants with laughter. That woman did not pay me back the bail money from last time. She said not taking payment for having sexual relations with my nephew was good enough. 43rd story. I am not an Uber driver, but my friends and I have always done this when we are on the way to a bar and we are sitting in the back of an Uber. We all pile in one by one, and my friend fires up this hilarious narrative where he talks about his adventures with the girl from last night. He uses insane detail about how things start getting pretty serious, and after one thing leads to another, she ends up taking a massive shit on his chest and then proceeds to eat it off of him. It is hilarious to watch the expressions of the Uber drivers when he tells them this story. Most of the time, they start cracking up in disbelief. Hell, we have even established a reputation with a few drivers in our city. We will get in the car and they will go, "Hey, you are the shit, guys." It is pretty hysterical. 44th story. Passenger, not a driver. The best taxi ride I ever got was from a Sikh driver from San Francisco to San Francisco International Airport. About a 15-minute ride. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning, and the guy was an absolute scream, like a stand-up comic. Almost Robin Williams pace, funny observations on traffic, flying, families. I was with my wife and children, etc. I wish I had been able to record it. I wondered at first if he was on drugs, but I do not think Sikhs do that. Best ride ever. 45th story. So I used to drive a van service for my university, which was mainly boring, but sometimes it got interesting on the weekends when people were getting intoxicated. Anyhow, I am cruising down a side street one quiet afternoon shift when this huge dude steps out and signals me. He is standing there with 4 of his friends, all of whom are equally giant, and was asking if I could take them across campus. Now, even though I had only talked to the dude for a few seconds, it was clear he was high out of his mind and that his friends were even further gone. Also, did I mention they were in costume as the village people? Because they were. So naturally, I think this is too good to pass up. and I let my dispatcher know I am taking an unplanned pickup. Meanwhile, these four massive guys, seriously, all of them were at least 6 feet, start folding themselves into the tiny van seats. As we pull out, one of the guys starts freaking out and is telling his buddies he drank too much and thinks he is going to die. Now, he did not look that bad, but I was in no mood to clean vomit off the floor. Fortunately, his relatively sober friend told me all was well and reminded his buddy that he had been drinking O'Doul's, non-alcoholic beer, for those of you who do not know. Now, I am relieved, but the extremely high dude behind me is having trouble processing the fact that he is not about to meet his maker. He knows he drank a lot and that it tasted like beer, so the idea that he might not be drunk is not sticking. He and his buddy have this fantastic back and forth that starts with an explanation of how you can make beer without alcohol and ends with some borderline heartfelt assertions of brother love. Now, I am struggling not to lose my composure throughout this whole exchange, but things were starting to calm down as I pulled over to drop them off. It was as they were getting out of the car that one of the other guys, up until this point passed out in the back seat, chimed in, "Wait, why on earth did we buy a rack of O'Doul's?" Thank you for watching this video to the end. In the comments below the video, write what is the strangest conversation you heard in a cab. And also be sure to subscribe to our channel not to miss new super interesting videos. And I advise you to watch our other videos.